Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over the rifle that you see in my hands and you saw throughout the intro. This is my version, or my build if you will, that is a SOPMOD Block II clone. So basically the rifle we have that we started out with was a Colt rifle, and we added a bunch of different parts to make it correct, about as correct as can be anyway, for a SOPMOD 2, or Block 2 rather, clone. So we're going to go through basically the rifle. We're also going to go through all the different things that were involved in the program in terms of parts, kits, stuff like that, that were released out there into the wild, and basically what you're still going to see out there now. But what we're going to do first is take a look at the accuracy that you can expect from this type of system. Come back in, get into the individual parts, basically what I think of them overall, and that should pretty much do it. But it should be a pretty fun video today. It's not a rifle that's commercially available, but it's one that the parts are somewhat available for, and if you guys wanted to build your own clone rifle, you can. So that's pretty much it. Let's step outside and see how it shoots, and then we'll come back in and get into those parts. Realistically, I could have put a higher magnification scope on here and probably tightened these groups up a little bit, but I kind of wanted to see how the rifle in this configuration, which of course is one of the correct configurations, actually does shoot as a system. So we have the ECOS ACOG on there, which is 4 power. Again, like I said, if I put something a little high power on there, might be able to get a little bit better groups. But we have the target down range at 100 yards. Got a stand here. I should be able to do all right. What I just put in that mag was the Guerrilla Munitions 55 grain Sierra Blitzkrieg load, and this has been a consistent good performer in a lot of different rifles. So we'll see how it does. But who knows? The rifle's actually zeroed for M193, so if we're a little bit off, we know why. But yeah, enough yapping. Let's get to shooting. There you go. That's the first 5. So a couple things to point out here is that this is just, you know, your standard Colt trigger in there, so nothing fancy at all. Again, we're not trying to test the barrel and see how that shoots. We're trying to test the system. At least I am anyway in this, just to kind of see what it does. So next up here we have some Guerrilla ammunition, excuse me. This is the 55 grain Sierra. I just shot that. Scratch the head. Next up, we have gold medal match. This is 69 grain stuff. This stuff's been consistently accurate in a bunch of different rifles. Got a little confused. I'm doing accuracy tests for about 11 different rifles today because it's the first day we've had in about a month where it's not super windy. So forgive me on that, guys. Anyway, Federal 69 grain match kit, Sierra match kit. All right. Lastly, we're going to be shooting some 69 grain hollow point boat tail rounds from Freedom Munitions. This is their Pro Mat series, so it's been pretty consistently accurate stuff out there. For those watching the video, I don't know. We have a 5% discount code from Freedom Munitions. That's here on the bottom of your screen. It is Mr. Guns and Gear. Get you 5% off anything over at their site. So thanks to Freedom for doing that, helping the viewers out here. And we'll see how this shoots. Go check it out. Those of you that are members of AR15.com probably know these barrels, these Colt SOCOM barrels, both the 14.5 and the 16 have a reputation for being absolute tack drivers. And this one here certainly lived up to the name. It was interesting though how all of these, just to let you know, the optic was zeroed right at the bottom corner, which is where I was holding. So I was holding bottom corner of each of these. It was zeroed right at it with 193. Now, these loads all shot a little bit lower, which is interesting. But anyway, the first load there, which was the 55 grain stuff, we are right at an inch. Then we went over to the gold medal match, at least as I remember it anyway. I'll annotate if I'm wrong. Right at 1.25 inches on that one. And then that grain, that group's just silly. That's the Freedom 69 grain stuff. And center to center, we're under 1/2 inch. So yeah, even with a 4-power optic, this thing can shoot. There's no getting around it. It is a tack driver. Before I go over the actual parts that are on this particular rifle, I kind of want to go over basically what is clone acceptable, if you will. So if you're out there and you're actually trying to build a clone, I'm going to list some of the parts that have been used on actual SOPMOD Block II rifles. So you're going to see different variations out there. One thing to take a look at here is just the image that was released, which was basically the SOPMOD Block II upgrade list, if you will, of different things that came over it, basically versus the M4A1 kits that were out there. So you can take a look at it and see what's on there. Some of that is what I'm going to mention here, and some of it's not. The reason is over the years, as these rifles were used in service, different services, different units, decided that certain products they wanted, certain ones they didn't, and certain ones were just heavily used more than others. So it's hard to say exactly what's clone correct, particularly these days, because a lot of SOPMOD Block II rifles are still out in service. They just swapped some stuff out, but during the period that these were being adopted, those are the parts I'm about to list now. So basically, the barrel on your rifle is going to be a Colt 14.5 inch, which is standard for the military for their M4, either an M4 profile barrel or the M4 SOCOM barrel. So we have that on this rifle. The flash hider is typically going to be the Surefire 4-prong, or sometimes you'll see the Knights Armament NT4 out there. You'll also see a bunch of basic A2s out there. Those were very prevalent as well. A lot of units just went with the A2 because the A2 is a good overall muzzle device. So the rail system that many of them used, one of them, of course, is going to be this one right here, which is the Daniel Defense RIS-2 rail. This one has the cutout. These are more rare, I guess you could say, out in the wild than the ones without the cutout. So a lot of them had the shaved down gas block here and had just a continuous rail out there. These are generally, I think they're 12.7 inches is what they are, or 13. I'll annotate it below if I can't remember correctly. You'll also see some of the early ones had the Knights Armament M4 rail on there, so just the basic one that was on the earlier rifle. Some of the Block IIs also had that, so you'll see both of those out there. For vertical grips, the most common one was the Tangled Down Battle Grip in tan. These days, those are almost impossible to find. Other acceptable ones that you'll see out there were grip pods. Grip pods were very big in the military when these rifles were coming around. And then also this one right here, which is the Knights Armament vertical grip. So those tend to be very normal. One thing that we also saw a lot of Block II rifles adopt were different rail panels, basically to stop the sort of cheese grater effect that you can get from a 1913 rail. Basically, Tango Down as well as Knights Armament are used most commonly. So in terms of front sights, if you didn't have one with the FSP cutout here, you'd usually see it with the Knights Armament little micro sight up front. And then, of course, on the rear sight, generally you're going to see the Knights Armament back here, or the Mach-Tech. So one of the two is what you're going to see on pretty much every Block II rifle. I don't think I've ever seen one without one of those two. In terms of IR lasers, basically everyone I've ever seen has the PEC 15 on there. I don't personally have a PEC 15, so you guys didn't see it throughout the video of me shooting, but those are very common on the actual issued ones, of course, because low light capability is extremely important. So for optics, a bunch of different ones were sort of standard, if you will. First and foremost, the EOTech EXPS3 is the one I saw more than anything over the years. The 553 was also out there, and again, that comes from the earlier rifles. The Elcan Spectre, a lot of those out there, that's the 1 to 5, which I've reviewed here on the channel before. Also, you'll see this one right here, which is the ACOG SU237, also known as the ECOS optic, which is a basic 4-power ACOG. It's a TA01 variant with a special reticle that was only built for this program, and then also a backup RMR. Some of them have the backup Doctor sights on there, so you'll see either of those out there in the wild. So and there are those. The stock that you see on a lot of them, at least as they came out of the armory anyway, is either going to be the B5 SOPMOD like we have here, or the LMT SOPMOD. Now out in the field, you're going to see Colt stocks out there, just the basic M4 stock. You'll also see a lot of Magpul MOE stocks. MOE stocks were kind of the hotness back when these were out. And they're still good stocks to this day, but basically the majority of them you're going to see are the SOPMOD stocks, which makes sense because this is a SOPMOD rifle, right? So that's the basic overview. Of course, in terms of lowers, you're almost always going to see Colt lowers, which is what this is here. Generally, you're going to have the straight grip on there. This is my personal lower that I have SBR'd, so with the SBR Colt lower, I just didn't want to take the trigger guard off because I don't want to risk damaging one that already has improved snap. Generally, you're going to see folks just using the A2 grip as well. That's very common. I suppose now we'll delve into the specifics of this particular rifle. So what you see on here is the 4-prong flash hider here from Surefire. These ones are one of the harder items to get, particularly these days. One reason was these were never available for sale to the general public. So Surefire only gave these out to, military units. So getting one now is sort of hard. It's sort of on the gray market. You basically have to find one used somewhere if you want to get one. So this one here, you'll generally see running between $300 to $400 on the forums. Now, a lot of folks who are building the clones just use the 3 prongs. You can get those for much cheaper, and functionally they're about the same. I really don't see any difference. Both are excellent flash hiders and both do well as a suppressor mount. So I should have mentioned earlier that in terms of suppressors that you see on the Block II rifles, Surefire was #1. You see those almost all the time. Again, you do see some Knights armaments out there as well, but Surefire definitely was the most common that you saw out there on the Block II rifles for sure. I may have mentioned it earlier in the video, but this barrel is a Colt SOCOM barrel, so it's 14.5 SOCOM profile. Excellent barrel. Like I said, these things are known for their accuracy. You guys saw it out there on the range, but basically it's a 1-in-7 twist barrel. It has the SOCOM profile, as the name indicates. It is chrome lined, and it is a 4150 button rifle barrel, so it's not cold hammer forged as some people might think, but that is the barrel. Those, generally speaking, are going to go for right around $300 out there on the internet. So again, not a cheap part, but one that certainly has an excellent reputation. The front sight block version, of course, is what I went with. Myself personally, I tend to like front sight blocks. I think it's the strongest method of having a front sight, but of course, the newer versions out there that are out are pretty strong as well. Now, the ones that had the low profile gas blocks a lot of times went with the Mark 12 style gas blocks. You'll see those out there in the wild if you actually look at the pictures out there. And the handguard is the Daniel Defense RS2, like we said, this one with the cutout, but these handguards are extremely solid. The mounting system is really about as strong as anything that's ever actually seen the market, in my opinion, for AR-15s. So the way it locks up here in the rear is simply phenomenal. The downside of it is that it's extraordinarily heavy. It's not a lightweight rail at all when you combine that with the SOCOM profile barrel. This rifle, although it's 14.5 inches, does get somewhat front heavy when you're handling it, but it does shoot very soft, again, due to the weight. So pros and cons to each. Of course, the CAC grip here is a very simple one. If you guys don't know, you just loosen this piece on the bottom. You can slide it back and forth, and when you want to tighten it down to wherever location you are at, just do so, and it locks in relatively securely. Again, the Tango Down is a very good one as well. I just didn't find one for this review. This rifle, of course, started out as a 6920 out there in the civilian world, so it's basic Colt M4 lower, Forged 7075 T6, same with the upper. That's generally what you're going to see on the military ones. Of course, those will have the happy switch up here for actually running either burst or full auto. From what I've seen, most of them have the burst in there rather than the full auto. I'm sure some of those were changed out in the field though. Charging handle, standard Colt charging handle. I've seen a couple PRI gas busters. I would imagine those were actually taken from units that had the Mark 12 and put those out there, but more common than not, you're going to see just the basic Colt charging handle, nothing too fancy there. And then again, in terms of the optic, this here is the ECOS from Trijicon. Generally speaking, you're going to see it with the arms mounts here. That was the most common. That's what we have here. This one here has a little bit of spray paint that's sort of not come all the way off. It comes in the tan configuration. There are some black ones, but the ones I've seen in the wild were all the tan variants. So Again, it's a fixed 4-power ACOG. I've done a million different reviews on those on the channel here over the years. So it has the unique reticle specifically designed for this variant of this rifle for this program. Has some backup iron sights that are rudimentary for sure. I would say within maybe 25 yards you could easily get hits with them, but beyond that they're not that great. They are truly backup in the truest sense of the word. And then of course we have the RMR on top. I believe it's a 3.5 MOA version that's on there. Again, the doctor sight was also relatively common to be seen with this setup, as well as with some LCANs out there. You can definitely see those too. Again, the more common one was going to be the EOTech, both the 5.53 and the EXPS. Haven't seen those out there recently. I think most folks are kind of moved beyond those. And earlier in the video, you saw me shooting this with the Aimpoint T1 in a LaRue mount. That is also somewhat correct, and what it's correct for is Ranger Battalion, 75th Ranger Battalion. Had a lot of those rifles out there. People have seen them in the wild, and they use that particular optic setup a good bit, so you will see a bunch of those out there in the wild. I popped the ECOS off so you guys could get a better look there at the actual rear sight. This one here is adjustable, so basically you're going to zero it here at the 2 setting for 200 yards, and then at that point you can actually just dial it up to dial in your elevation. It's a very high quality, well made rear sight. I believe they had both the 300 meter and 600 meter versions out there in the SOPMOD kits, so you can see both of them. Both would be period correct. Again, this rifle started out as a 6920, so we have the 4-position 7075 T6 aluminum extension on there. Now, of course, out in the wild, you will see these built up with some 6-position ones as well. So you'll see both out there. Both would be clone correct. We have the B5 SOPMOD stock here. The LMT SOPMOD stock, like I mentioned earlier, is also out there in a good bit of use. Me personally, as a civilian, the B5, or even military really for that matter, but the B5 is just as good and going to save you some money for sure. So it's a good stock overall. I have a full review of it. Get a nice wide cheek weld if you're laying down behind that ACOG for a while. It's very comfortable to do so. Of course, QD sling points and all that stuff. Excellent stock all the way around. It has a nice snug fit on most receivers as well. I think we hit most of the important features on the rifle. I know one thing I left off was the lights. So there's a few lights that you see out there in most of the photos when you find these. Number one is the in-sight light. That's extremely hard to find these days. They haven't been made in years, and they're very, very collectible, and you pay a pretty premium for them out there because, again, there's just so many of them on the planet. So that in-sight was very popular. Also the Surefire 720 Raid, you'll see some of those, and you'll also see a lot of what you saw here in this video, which was the Surefire M600 in tan. It's a scout light. It was very popular on these rifles as well because, think about it, it's working in concert with the PEC-15 that a lot of guys are running the dual switch for, and it really is a very good ergonomic package, and it's a great light. So that's what I was using. That's what I would probably look for if I was you out there as a civilian trying to build a clone rifle. It's probably going to be the cheapest one that you're going to find to match the clone, if you will. So one thing I alluded to earlier but didn't specify was weight. So with this rifle, as you see it here with the light on there that you saw earlier, this rifle weighs 8 pounds and 12 ounces. So 8 pounds and 12 ounces for a 14.5-inch carbine is a lot. So there's ways to shave weight, of course, but I just kind of wanted to point that out because a lot of times these days, folks are looking for an unloaded weight of at least 7 pounds or something like that for a battle rifle. And these were heavy rifles, not really for that time, but as we look at them now in 2017. So another thing I neglected to mention is magazines. Generally speaking, you're going to see the SureFeed or OK Industries magazines, USGI. A lot of units that went with these also had PMags, so you'll see a ton of PMags out there and photos of these out in the wild. So both are going to be clone correct. Of course, ammo, that's going to be a lot unit dependent, but M855 and then of course the Mark 262 rounds and stuff like that were very common as well. But this barrel will shoot just about anything well, as you guys saw. It shot them all well. So it's an accurate gun. It's a fun gun to build if you guys are into clone builds. If you're not and you think this is just crazy, that's cool. But they're not cheap either. So again, we'll put a parts list of all this stuff down below for those of you guys looking for it. You can pick them up. Some of the things you really can't pick up outside of like used stuff on forums, particularly the handguard and the 4-prong. Again, you can get the 3-prong. It's pretty widely available. So that's pretty much it. Oh, I forgot, we're going to roll in some pictures here. A buddy of mine was in 5th group, and they had a team, he was on a team rather, that had a bunch of Block II rifles. He sent over a few pictures he had of them, so I'm rolling these in. I think they're the first time they're being seen out in the public, so that's kind of cool. If you guys want to see a bunch of other pictures out there of these rifles in the wild, head over to ar15.com. I'll put a link down below in the comments section, or in the video description rather, and you guys can see, I think there's like 700 and something pages as of this video of SOPMOD Block II photos and information on these rifles. I really just scratched the surface here, very much so. There's a ton of info out there if you guys are interested in building one of these up yourselves, or sort of what this program has evolved to in the current days, because it has changed a lot. So that info is all over there for you guys to check out. If you guys have any questions about the rifle, anything like that, you can always post down below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page, which is generally the best way to get in touch with me. I tend to see the messages there, not so much here. If you guys are finding this video through a Google search and you're not subscribed, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. For those of you that are subscribed, I appreciate it. And thanks for watching, guys. We will see you in the next video.